The psychology of English fluency. I want you to imagine something. You walk into a room full of people speaking English. Their voices feel faster, their confidence feels louder, their sentences feel sharper. Your heartbeat rises, your palms get warm. A strange tightness forms in your throat. Your mind starts searching for words you already know but suddenly can't find. You want to say something simple, maybe hello, but your mouth refuses to move. You stand there with a frozen smile, hoping no one asks you anything, because if they do, your voice might crack, your grammar might break, your accent might sound strange, and then people might judge you. You promise yourself quietly, next time, I'll speak next time. But when the next time comes, you freeze again. These first feelings, the heartbeat, the tightness, the panic, did not come from English, they came from your mind. This is the part of English learning that no one talks about. Not teachers, not books, not grammar lessons, but it is the real reason millions of learners struggle. English fluency is not a language problem, it's a psychological one. Today, in this first segment, I want to take you deep inside the emotional and mental world where fluency actually begins. Because if you don't fix what's happening in your mind, no amount of vocabulary or grammar will help. Your brain is the engine. Your language is just the vehicle. Let's go back to the story. In that room you imagined, something important was happening inside your brain. Your brain wasn't confused about English, it was protecting you from possible embarrassment. This is a survival response called the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. When your brain senses danger, even emotional danger, it shuts down your fluency to keep you safe. This is why you suddenly forget words you already know, why your pronunciation becomes shaky, why your sentences collapse even though you practice them perfectly at home. Your brain isn't your enemy. It is trying to protect you from humiliation, rejection, negative judgment. But in doing so, it also blocks your fluency. When I first learned this, everything started making sense. It explained why some students could write good essays but spoke very little. It explained why people stay silent in meetings even though they understand every word. It explained why learners freeze when a native speaker says something unexpectedly fast. English fluency is built on three pillars: your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs. Language is only the fourth pillar. If the first three are weak, the fourth cannot stand. Let's break down the psychology behind this. The first psychological block is fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being judged, fear of sounding slow or simple, fear of embarrassment. Most learners think they are afraid of English. They are not. They are afraid of people. Once your brain believes speaking English equals possible embarrassment, it creates an emotional wall. This wall feels heavy. It feels tight. It feels like you don't have air. It feels like your voice disappears. The second psychological block is perfectionism. You believe you must speak perfect English to speak at all. So you wait, you overthink, you rehearse sentences in your mind 10 times before speaking. You tell yourself, when I become confident, I will speak. But the truth is the opposite. You speak first. Confidence comes later. Fluency doesn't grow in silence, It grows in mistakes. The third psychological block is identity. Your brain has a specific image of who you are. Your first language fits that identity perfectly, but English feels foreign, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. Your brain says, "This isn't me." So it resists, it avoids, it pulls you back to comfort. This is why you feel like a different person when speaking English, shyer, quieter, smaller. But here is the truth. Fluency is not becoming a different person. It is expanding the person you already are. Once you accept this, the psychological battle becomes easier. Now, let's blend this science with a real moment from my life. A few years ago, I met a learner named Rosa. She was brilliant, hardworking, and understood English better than most students. But when she tried to speak, her voice became a whisper. Her sentences broke, her words evaporated. One day I asked her, "What scares you the most about speaking English?" She didn't say grammar, she didn't say vocabulary, she didn't say pronunciation. She said, "I'm scared they'll think I'm stupid." That sentence told me everything. Her problem wasn't English. Her problem was the belief she carried about herself, a belief created by years of pressure, correction, and comparison. Rosa didn't need English lessons first. She needed psychological healing. She needed to understand that speaking imperfectly doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. It makes you a learner. It makes you brave. Just like Rosa, millions of learners carry emotional wounds from school, family, or society. Teachers who laughed, classmates who judged, parents who pressured, bosses who humiliated. These wounds become mental barriers between you and fluency. So, how do we fix this? We begin by shifting the psychology. First, understand this simple truth. Fluency is not the ability to speak without mistakes. Fluency is the ability to keep speaking despite mistakes. Second, train your brain to see English not as a threat, but as a tool for opportunity, a tool for connection, a tool for expressing your real self. Third, challenge the negative beliefs that control your voice. Ask yourself, who told you you're not good enough? Who told you your accent is wrong? Who decided your age is a limitation? Why do you believe them? You must rewrite those beliefs. You must talk back to the fear. Tell yourself, my voice matters. My mistakes are proof that I'm learning. I deserve to speak. I deserve to be heard. The more your brain hears this, the weaker your fear becomes. In the next 6 segments, we will go deeper into the psychology of speaking, thinking, listening, and internal confidence. But before moving on, I want you to take one moment and ask yourself a simple question. What exactly am I afraid of when I speak English? Find the answer. Look at it clearly. Then say, I am ready to break this. Because the truth is simple. English fluency begins in the mind long before it shows up in your mouth. And once your mind is free, your language will follow. This is where our journey begins. Before you ever speak an English sentence, before you ever understand a word someone says to you, something much deeper happens first. Your brain begins building a mental map of sounds, a map of patterns, a map of meanings, a map of confidence and fear. Most learners believe English is stored in textbooks, memory, and rules, But English doesn't live in your mind the way you think it does. It isn't stored in vocabulary lists. It isn't stored in grammar charts. It isn't stored in isolated rules. English lives in a system, your brain's psychological learning system. And if you don't understand how this system works, you will always feel like you're fighting against yourself. Today, in this segment, I want to take you inside the mind of a fluent speaker. Not to impress you, but to show you that you can train your mind the same way, no matter your age, background, or starting point. Let me begin by telling you something extremely important. Your brain is not designed for language rules. It is designed for language patterns. Rules are conscious, patterns are automatic. Fluent speakers do not follow rules while speaking. They follow patterns burned into their brains through repetition, exposure, and emotional connection. This is why two learners with the same grammar knowledge can have completely different speaking abilities. One speaks naturally, the other freezes. The difference is not intelligence, it is mental wiring. So let's break down how your brain actually learns English. First, English enters your mind as sound. Even if you're reading, your brain turns those letters into imagined sound waves. Your brain wants rhythm, tone, melody, emotion, but most learners study English in silence. No sound, no rhythm, no melody. That creates a psychological conflict. Your brain is forced to learn language in an unnatural way. Next, your brain tries to form connections. Connections between meaning and sound. Connections between old information and new information. Connections between emotion and memory. If you attach fear to English, the brain blocks fluency. If you attach excitement to English, the brain accelerates fluency. This is why children learn so quickly. They attach curiosity, play, and joy to language. Adults attach fear, pressure, judgment. But here is the good news. Your brain can be retrained. Neuroplasticity is real. Your mind can grow new pathways at any age. A 12-year-old brain can learn English. A 30-year-old brain can learn English. A 65-year-old brain can learn English. There is no scientific barrier, only psychological barriers. Now let me give you a simple example. Imagine two learners. One listens to English podcasts daily with curiosity, even if they don't understand everything. The other listens with fear and frustration because they want to understand every word. Which learner will improve faster? The one with curiosity. Why? Because the brain opens when it is relaxed and closes when it is stressed. This is not motivation, this is biology. When your mind enters a state of stress, it releases cortisol, a hormone that shuts down memory formation. This is why you can study for hours yet remember nothing. This is why you can understand English at home but forget everything in front of people. Your brain is not failing, your emotions are interfering. So let me explain the three mental states your brain needs for fluency. The first state is relaxed awareness. This is when your mind is focused but calm. You are not forcing understanding, you are allowing it. You are absorbing patterns without pressure. This is the ideal state for listening practice, shadowing, and reading. The second state is emotional engagement. When English is connected to a story, a memory, a feeling, a moment, it becomes unforgettable. This is why movies, stories, and conversations teach you more than textbooks ever will. Emotion is glue, it makes language stick. The third state is active output. Your brain grows stronger through speaking, not passive understanding. Output reorganizes your brain. It builds fluency connections. It strengthens your language pathways. But here is the psychological truth most learners ignore. Output feels uncomfortable because it exposes your gaps. It makes you feel vulnerable. And the brain hates vulnerability. So the brain protects you with silence. It whispers excuses like, "You're not ready yet. Your grammar is not good enough. You will embarrass yourself. Speak later." But later never comes because the brain cannot build fluency in silence. It can only build fluency in action. Let me give you a short story to illustrate this. A student named Daniel once told me, "I understand everything, but when I speak, my mind goes blank." This was not an English problem. This was a psychological protection problem. His brain had learned to associate English speaking with danger. Because of us, one embarrassing mistake he made in front of classmates when he was 12. That moment created an emotional scar. And that scar shaped his fluency for the next 20 years. The day he finally improved was the day he rewired that memory. He said a sentence out loud every morning: "My voice is allowed to exist." It may sound simple, but it changed everything. Not because the sentence is magical, but because he broke the emotional pattern that was controlling him. This is why the psychology of fluency matters. Your brain is not a machine. It is a living system shaped by years of fear, doubt, identity, and emotion. If you don't address those emotions, your fluency will always fight against you. Now let's talk about the biggest psychological shift you need. You must change your relationship with mistakes. Fluent speakers make mistakes constantly. Native speakers make grammar mistakes every single day. They do not freeze. They do not apologize. They do not judge themselves. They keep speaking because their identity is not threatened by mistakes. You need to build that same identity. You need to speak with the mindset that mistakes are not failures. They are steps in your fluency formation. If you emotionally punish yourself for every mistake, your brain will suppress your voice. But if you emotionally reward yourself for speaking despite mistakes, your brain will expand your voice. It is that simple and that hard. Let me show you a psychological trick that fluent learners use. When they forget a word, they do not panic. They do not freeze. They do not give up. They replace the missing word with another. This keeps the mind flexible. This reduces the emotional pressure. This tells the brain that speaking is safe. Your brain learns through signals. Every time you panic, you teach the brain, "Speaking English is dangerous." Every time you speak calmly, you teach the brain, "Speaking English is safe." Now imagine doing that for 30 days. Your entire fluency psychology would reset. Your voice would grow stronger. Your confidence would deepen. In the next segment, we will explore how to train your speaking mind, how to build confidence, eliminate fear, and create a voice that feels natural and strong. But for now, I want you to remember one truth. English fluency is not built in your mouth, it is built in your mind. And once your mind changes, your language follows. Speaking is the most feared part of English learning. Not writing, not listening, not reading, speaking. And ironically, speaking is the part of English your brain tries hardest to protect you from. You may not realize it, but every time you open your mouth to speak English, a psychological process begins. Your brain evaluates risk. It scans for judgment. It predicts embarrassment. It tries to avoid danger. This process is automatic, ancient, and deeply human. It has nothing to do with your intelligence. It has nothing to do with your level. It has nothing to do with your accent. It has everything to do with survival. The biggest mistake English learners make is assuming their speaking problems come from grammar or vocabulary. They don't. Your speaking problems come from the emotional history stored inside your brain. Let me start with the simple truth. Your brain freezes not because you don't know English, but because you don't feel safe speaking English. When you understand this, everything changes. Today, we will explore the psychology behind speaking, why your voice disappears, why your mind goes blank, why your sentences get stuck, and how to break these patterns and finally speak with calmness and clarity. Let's begin with a scenario you know very well. You prepare a sentence in your mind. It sounds perfect. You feel ready. Then you try to say the sentence, and suddenly your mind becomes empty. Why does this happen? Because the speaking brain is different from the thinking brain. Your thinking brain works in silence. Your speaking brain works under pressure. The moment you speak, you move into a state of performance, and performance activates fear. Fear activates cortisol. Cortisol shuts down the parts of your brain responsible for memory, fluidity, and clarity. In other words, your speaking ability collapses under psychological pressure, not linguistic difficulty. This is why you can speak well when you are alone, but struggle in front of people. This is why you speak well when talking to someone who feels safe, but freeze with someone who feels intimidating. This is why you can speak fluently in your mind, but not with your mouth. The problem is not your English, the problem is your emotional state. So let's break down the three biggest emotional triggers that freeze your speaking. The first trigger is social threat. Humans are wired to avoid rejection. When you speak a foreign language, your brain feels socially exposed, vulnerable, unprotected. It thinks, what if I sound wrong? What if they laugh? What if they judge my accent? Your brain reacts as if you're facing real danger. Your heart speeds up, your breath shortens, your voice weakens. But none of this is caused by English itself. It is caused by fear of social judgment. The second trigger is perfectionism. Perfectionists struggle the most with speaking because speaking is messy by nature. It is fast. It is spontaneous. It is imperfect. People who demand perfection from themselves cannot handle the chaotic nature of spoken English. They try to speak perfectly, but perfect speech is impossible, even for native speakers. So the moment they make a mistake, they panic internally. The panic interrupts fluency. Interruptions lead to hesitation. Hesitation leads to awkwardness. Awkwardness leads to more fear. It becomes a psychological cycle. The third trigger is identity conflict. Your brain has a sense of who you are in your native language. You sound natural, expressive, confident. But in English, you feel like a different person, simpler, quieter, less intelligent. This identity clash confuses your brain. It doesn't recognize your English speaking self, so it tries to protect you by reducing your output. Your brain does not want you to feel like a weaker version of yourself, so it tries to keep you silent. Now let's talk about how to break these psychological patterns. Your speaking will not improve by memorizing more vocabulary or studying more grammar. Those things matter, but they cannot fix fear. Fear must be fixed emotionally, not academically. The first method is desensitization. This means slowly training your brain to see speaking as safe. You do this through small, daily, low-pressure speaking exercises like talking to yourself, narrating your actions, describing what you see. Each time you speak without negative consequences, your brain learns, I survived. This is okay. The fear slowly reduces. The second method is pattern training. Fluent speakers rely on prepared patterns, not spontaneous perfection. When you practice common speaking formulas, introductions, opinions, reactions, explanations, your brain gains confidence. Patterns reduce cognitive load. They make speaking feel predictable, organized, safe. The third method is perspective shifting. Instead of focusing on how you sound, focus on what you are communicating. Instead of thinking, do I sound perfect? Ask yourself, is my message clear? This reduces the emotional pressure dramatically. The fourth method is emotional rewriting. You must replace old painful memories related to English with new positive experiences. This is how a student who once felt humiliated can learn to feel confident again. Let me share a story. A learner named Hannah once told me she never spoke English because of a single traumatic moment when a classmate mocked her accent. That one memory controlled her voice for years. Her breakthrough came when she had a small, successful interaction with a stranger at a cafe. One moment of success rewrote years of fear. Your emotional life is built on moments. You only need one good moment to begin rewriting everything. Now, let me give you a psychological exercise that has helped thousands of learners. Every morning, speak a simple 2-minute monologue. It can be about anything: your plans, your worries, your breakfast. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to teach your brain my voice exists in English. Then record it. Listen without judgment. This builds self-acceptance. This builds emotional resilience. This strengthens your speaking identity. When you do this daily, your speaking psychology changes. You begin to feel natural, not because your English improved magically, but because your brain stopped treating English as a threat. Another technique is exposure therapy. Expose yourself to short, simple interactions: ordering food, greeting someone, asking for directions. Each success weakens the fear cycle. Each interaction tells your brain you are safe. Keep going. Let me leave you with a final truth. Fluency is not the ability to speak without fear. Fluency is the ability to speak despite fear. Everyone feels nervous. Even native speakers feel nervous in new situations. But fluent speakers trust themselves, and trust is a psychological skill that grows with use. In the next segment, we will explore the psychology of thinking in English, how your inner thoughts shape your outer voice. But before that, take a deep breath and remember, your voice is waiting for you. Your confidence is waiting for you. Your fluency is waiting for you. And the moment you learn to calm your mind, your English will begin to flow. How your inner world shapes your outer voice. Before a single English word ever leaves your mouth, it exists somewhere else first, inside your mind, inside your thoughts, inside the private world where language begins long before it is spoken. Most learners do not realize this, but you do not speak a language the moment you learn it. You speak a language the moment you think in it. Your thinking shapes your fluency. Your fluency shapes your confidence, and your confidence shapes your voice. Speaking English is not just a linguistic act, it is a psychological one. It reflects how your mind processes information, how your emotions react to pressure, and how your identity engages with a second language. To understand fluency, we must begin by understanding thinking. Let me start with the scene you know too well. You are in the middle of a conversation. Someone asks you a question in English. You understand it perfectly. You even know the answer. But you cannot speak, not because you don't know English, but because your mind is translating. Your brain is trying to rearrange your native language into English in real time. This delays your response. This creates hesitation. This breaks your flow, and suddenly a simple thought becomes a complicated struggle. This is not a language issue, it is a cognitive load issue. Your mind is working too hard. The truth is, translation slows your brain down because thinking in one language and speaking in another is unnatural for the mind. It creates interference. Your thoughts collide, your attention splits, your anxiety rises, and fluency collapses. The solution is simple yet profound. Train your brain to think directly in English. But that raises the real question, why is thinking in English so difficult? The first reason is habit. You have spent decades thinking in your native language. Your brain is deeply wired to use it automatically. Even when you study English, your core thought patterns remain in your first language. The second reason is fear. Your mind avoids thinking in English because English feels uncertain, unfamiliar, and unpredictable. The mind always chooses safety over discomfort, even at the cost of fluency. The third reason is identity. Your native language is part of who you are. When you try to think in English, you feel like a different, less competent version of yourself. Your brain resists this unfamiliar identity. So, how do you break these psychological barriers and build an English thinking mind? You begin by lowering the complexity of your thoughts. Thinking in English does not begin with deep ideas, intellectual reflections, or philosophical discussions. It begins with simple sentences, simple observations, simple descriptions, simple inner dialogue. For example, instead of thinking, I need to cook dinner, wash the dishes, and call my sister. Your English thinking mind says, cook dinner, wash dishes, call sister. Short, direct, simple. This is the foundation of inner fluency. Once your brain becomes comfortable with short English thoughts, it gradually begins to expand them. But if you wait for the day when you can form perfect English sentences in your mind, you will wait forever. Perfect thinking comes after imperfect thinking, not before. The next method is narrative thinking. Your mind loves stories. It learns through stories. It remembers through stories. It organizes information through stories. So talk to yourself in English as if you are telling a story, even if the story is simple. For example, I am walking to the store. The weather is cold. I am thinking about dinner. When your mind narrates your life in English, fluency becomes natural. Speaking becomes just an extension of your inner voice. The third method is emotional thinking. This is powerful because emotion strengthens memory. When you think emotional thoughts in English, your brain absorbs the language more deeply. For example, I feel tired today. I'm proud of myself. I'm nervous, but I will try. I can do this. Emotional thinking rewires the psychology of fluency. It trains your mind to attach English to your feelings, not just to rules. The next technique is micro-thinking. This means thinking in English in small bursts throughout the day, not long conversations in your head. When you wake up, good morning. When you look outside, beautiful sky. When you drink water, cold water, good feeling. These micro thoughts add up. They slowly strengthen your inner English voice. Another powerful technique is switching context. Your brain thinks differently depending on environment. So create English thinking zones. Your kitchen can become an English zone. Your desk can become an English zone. Your morning walk can become an English zone. Your shower can become an English zone. In these places, you think only in English, even if the thoughts are simple. This builds environmental cues for fluency. Now, let me tell you a story from a woman I once taught named Elena. She understood English well but could never speak naturally. Her sentences were broken, her flow disappeared, her confidence was fragile. One day I asked her a question. Do you think in English? She laughed and said, only when I force myself. That was her problem. Her English thoughts were not natural. They were forced, mechanical, unnatural. So we tried an experiment. Every morning she would narrate her breakfast routine in English in her mind. It took 10 seconds. But those 10 seconds changed everything. 3 months later, her speaking became smoother. Her hesitation disappeared. Her sentences were clearer. Not because her grammar improved, but because her thinking improved. Your fluency is only as strong as your inner voice. Another important psychological principle is mental rehearsal. Your brain cannot tell the difference between real practice and imagined practice. So when you imagine yourself speaking English confidently, your brain builds pathways identical to real speaking. This is why athletes visualize success, why performers rehearse mentally, why fluent speakers think in English before speaking. Visualization is fluency training. Picture yourself answering a question confidently. Picture yourself speaking clearly. Picture yourself having a conversation effortlessly. Your mind prepares your language. But the most powerful shift is this. You must change the way you talk to yourself about English. If you tell yourself, I am bad at speaking, your mind believes it. If you tell yourself, I always forget words, your mind reinforces it. If you tell yourself, I can never think in English, your brain closes the door. But if you change the narrative to, I am learning, I am improving, I will try, I can speak, your brain opens the door. The psychology of fluency is built on inner permission. You must allow yourself to think in English. You must allow yourself to speak imperfectly. You must allow yourself to grow. The moment your inner voice becomes English friendly, fluency becomes your natural state. In the next segment, we will explore listening psychology, how your brain processes English sound, and how to train listening skills that automatically improve speaking. But for now, remember this. You will not speak like a fluent person until you think like one. And thinking like one begins with a single sentence. This is my English mind, and I am ready to use it. If speaking is the part of English that exposes you, listening is the part that overwhelms you. Every learner knows the feeling. You listen to a native speaker. The words arrive too quickly. The sounds blend together. The endings disappear. The rhythm feels unpredictable. Your mind tries to catch the meaning, but the sentence has already moved on, and suddenly you feel lost, not because you're incapable, but because your brain has not yet adapted to English sound. Listening is not just an ear skill, it is a brain skill. It requires psychological readiness, emotional calmness, and cognitive flexibility. It requires training, not just exposure. Most learners underestimate listening. They think listening is passive. They believe they can simply listen more and magically become fluent. But the psychology of listening is far more complex. Listening is active. Listening is mental. Listening is emotional. And today, I want to show you exactly how your mind processes English sound and how you can train your brain to understand English the way fluent speakers do. Let's begin with the first psychological truth. You are not listening to words, you're listening to sound patterns. Your brain is not designed to hear separate words in fast speech. It is designed to hear connected sound waves. This is why two learners can hear the same sentence. One understands everything, the other hears nothing. The difference is not talent, it is training. The fluent listener has trained their brain to recognize English patterns. The struggling listener has trained their brain to expect clean, textbook English. Real English is not clean. It is fast, it is messy, it is compressed. Native speakers blend words, they cut sounds, they skip syllables, they connect everything into a flowing river of sound. Your brain cannot identify individual stones in a river. It must learn to feel the flow. This is the psychology of listening. Now let me break down the biggest mental barrier in listening. Overthinking. When you listen in your native language, you decode meaning automatically. You never think about grammar, sentence structure, or vocabulary. But when listening in English, you become hyperconscious. You try to analyze every word. You try to translate. You try to understand perfectly. This mental pressure slows your brain, it blocks comprehension, it creates listening anxiety. Your brain cannot analyze and understand at the same time. It must choose one. Unfortunately, most learners choose analysis, and that kills comprehension. Let me give you a scenario. You hear someone say, "What you want to do later?" Your brain panics because you're waiting for "what do you want to do later?" But real English does not sound like written English. Your brain expects one thing, but hears another. This mismatch triggers confusion. Confusion triggers stress. Stress triggers shutdown. Your brain didn't fail. Your expectation did. This is why you understand English movies better after turning on subtitles. Not because subtitles teach you meaning, but because subtitles calm your brain. They remove stress. They allow comprehension to flow. Your listening improves when your mind relaxes. Your mind relaxes when it trusts itself. Trust develops through exposure without pressure. Now let's talk about another important psychological principle: prediction. Fluent listeners do not understand every word. They predict meaning. They anticipate the next idea. They follow context, tone, rhythm, intention. When you rely only on hearing every word, you miss the overall message. When you rely on prediction, your brain listens faster. Imagine reading a sentence where the last word is missing. You can still understand it because your mind fills the gap. The same mechanism works in listening. Context fills the gaps your ears cannot. A student named Miguel once told me, "I can understand English when I already know the topic." He believed this was a weakness. But this is actually the brain's natural listening strategy. The more you understand the topic, the less effort your brain needs to decode sound. This frees mental space for comprehension. But the most powerful listening shift comes from emotional state. If you feel nervous, your brain reduces its processing speed. If you feel calm, your brain increases it. This is why learners often understand English podcasts at home, but struggle in real conversations. At home, they are relaxed. In real life, they are pressured. The psychology of listening is deeply tied to emotional safety. Now, let me show you how fluent listeners train their brain. There are 3 listening modes. Mode 1, surface listening. This is basic understanding. You catch keywords, you guess the general meaning. You do not worry about details. This mode builds familiarity. Mode 2, deep listening. Here you focus on patterns, stress, pronunciation, rhythm. You listen repeatedly. You imitate sound, you shadow. This mode builds speech-level fluency. Mode 3, passive listening. Here, English plays in the background while your mind does other tasks. Your brain absorbs rhythm subconsciously. This reduces listening anxiety. All 3 modes are essential. Together, they train the brain to treat English as normal, not foreign. Another essential technique is chunk recognition. The brain processes language in groups, not single words. Native speakers speak in chunks. I don't know. Hold on a second. as far as I know. I've been thinking, when you learn chunks, you bypass the need for translation. Chunks also reduce cognitive load, making comprehension easier and faster. Now, let me share a personal story from a learner named Alina. She watched English movies every day for 2 years, but her listening did not improve. She thought she was doing the right thing, but she wasn't. She was listening passively but without awareness. She was watching movies with subtitles in her language. She was not training her brain, she was entertaining it. Her breakthrough came when she changed one habit. She started shadowing movie dialogue for 5 minutes each day. Not entire scenes, just 5 minutes. Within a month, her listening improved dramatically. Not because she studied more, but because she trained her auditory brain. Now, let me give you something even more powerful. Your listening improves fastest when you train your brain to tolerate not understanding. This is the opposite of what schools teach. Schools create pressure to understand everything. Real fluency teaches you to stay calm even when you understand only 60%. If your brain stays relaxed, comprehension rises naturally. If your brain panics, comprehension collapses. Listening is a mental game, not a linguistic one. Finally, let me give you 3 daily exercises that rewire listening. Psychology. Exercise 1. One sentence. Shadowing. Choose one sentence and imitate it perfectly, not vocabulary, sound. Exercise 2. 3 level listening. Level 1. Listen once for general meaning. Level 2. Listen again for keywords. Level 3. Listen again for patterns. This strengthens cognitive endurance. Exercise. 3. Passive English environment. Play English podcasts while cooking, cleaning, or walking. No pressure, just exposure. This reduces fear. The truth is simple. You cannot become a fluent speaker without becoming a strong listener. Your speaking depends on how your brain processes sound. Your confidence depends on how safe your mind feels with English rhythm. Your fluency depends on how deeply you trust yourself when listening. In the next segment, we will explore the psychology of confidence, how your emotional patterns define your voice. But for now, remember, your ears learn English, but your brain understands it. Train your brain, and fluency will follow. Confidence is not an English skill, it is a psychological state. Before confidence appears in your voice, it appears in your emotions. Before it appears in your sentences, it appears in your beliefs. Before you sound confident in English, you must feel safe inside yourself. Most learners think confidence comes after fluency. But in reality, fluency comes after confidence. Your voice follows your emotions, never the other way around. Today, I want to take you into the emotional world behind English confidence. Because your grammar doesn't decide if you speak well. Your vocabulary doesn't decide if you speak clearly. Your accent doesn't decide if people understand you. Your emotions decide everything. Let's begin with a moment you probably know too well. You're about to speak. Your chest tightens. Your throat feels tense. Your breath becomes shallow. Your mind tries to prepare the perfect sentence. Your heart beats faster. Your confidence disappears. And then your voice becomes uncertain, shaky, or completely silent. This is not a language failure. This is an emotional reaction. Your brain believes speaking English is dangerous, dangerous to your reputation, dangerous to your identity, dangerous to your sense of competence. So your brain does something very human. It protects you by shutting down your voice. You don't freeze because you don't know English. You freeze because your brain thinks silence is safer. Confidence is the opposite of fear. But fear does not disappear by studying more grammar. Fear disappears through psychological training. To understand how confidence works, we need to understand the fear behind it. The first fear is fear of judgment. Almost every learner I've ever met carries this fear quietly. They imagine people laughing. They imagine people misunderstanding. They imagine people criticizing their accent or mistakes. But here is the truth: most learners don't realize. Native speakers don't judge you, they admire you, because learning a language is an act of bravery. It requires vulnerability, courage, and persistence. The only person who judges your English is you. Your inner critic is louder than any real critic. The second fear is fear of failure. This happens when learners believe one mistake equals total failure. They treat mistakes the way students treat exam errors. But real conversation is not an exam, it is a human connection. Mistakes are not failures, they are bridges. They create understanding, they show effort. Fluent speakers make mistakes constantly. They forget words, they correct themselves, they change sentences mid-speech, they laugh at themselves. Confidence isn't the absence of mistakes, it is the ability to continue speaking despite mistakes. The third fear is fear of identity damage. When you speak English, you don't feel like the same person. Your humor changes. Your personality feels smaller. Your intelligence feels hidden. This emotional disconnection makes you feel weak, insecure, and uncomfortable. But that feeling is temporary. It is not a reflection of your real self. It is a reflection of your psychological adjustment process. Your identity in English is being built. And like every new identity, it feels fragile at the beginning. Confidence grows when you allow yourself to be imperfect in your second identity. Now that we understand the fears, let's talk about building confidence. Confidence has three psychological foundations: self-permission, emotional safety, identity expansion. Let's take them one by one. Self-permission is the moment you tell yourself, I have the right to speak English. This is the most powerful psychological shift. Most learners secretly feel they don't deserve to speak unless their English is good enough. This belief kills fluency. You do not need permission to speak, you need courage to speak. When you give yourself permission to speak imperfectly, your voice becomes free. The second foundation is emotional safety. If your mind feels unsafe, your fluency collapses. Safe environments improve English dramatically. This is why you speak better when you're talking to a friend, when you're relaxed, when you're alone, when no one is judging. When the conversation is friendly and your English becomes worse, when you're nervous, when you fear making mistakes, when you feel pressure, when people are watching, when the environment feels serious, your fluency is emotional before it is linguistic. So how do we build emotional safety? by creating controlled, low-pressure speaking experiences. Talk to yourself, shadow sentences, record voice notes, speak while cooking, speak while walking. Every moment of safe speaking tells your brain, see, nothing bad happened. This slowly removes fear. The third foundation is identity expansion. This means allowing yourself to become a version of you that exists in English. Not less intelligent, not less confident, not less expressive, just different, because every language gives you another version of yourself. Some people become calmer in English. Some become more direct. Some become more polite. Some become more open. Your English identity is not a weaker version of you. It is a new extension of you. And the moment you embrace this, speaking becomes easier. Now let's talk about confidence habits. Confidence is not something you magically receive. It is something you practice. Here are 5 psychological habits fluent speakers use. Habit 1. They speak early. They don't wait for perfection. They speak from the beginning, even if the sentences are simple. Habit 2. They don't apologize for their English. They don't say, sorry for my bad English. They speak confidently even when making mistakes. Habit 3. They use emotional breathing. Before speaking, they take slow, deep breaths to calm the nervous system. Habit 4. They focus on meaning, not grammar. They want to express ideas, not pass exams. Habit 5. They treat mistakes as neutral. When they make a mistake, they continue speaking naturally. Confidence grows through repetition. It grows through exposure. It grows through acceptance. Now let me share a story. A learner named Julia once told me she couldn't speak English because she felt stupid. She believed her accent was ugly. She believed others were judging her. She believed she was too old to sound fluent. Her real problem wasn't English. It was shame. Shame kills confidence more than any grammar rule ever could. Together, we did a simple exercise. Every morning, she recited one sentence out loud. My voice deserves space. At first, she didn't believe it, but she repeated it anyway. Day after day, week after week, one small belief created a new identity. One new identity created a new confidence. One new confidence created a new fluency. Her story became her victory, and so will yours. Confidence is not built in the classroom. It is built in your heart. It is built in your breath. It is built in your courage. In the next segment, we will explore the final psychological stage, long-term fluency mindset and emotional mastery. But for now, remember, your confidence is not missing. It is hidden. And every time you speak, even imperfectly, you bring it back to life. There comes a moment in every learner's life when English stops being a subject and starts becoming a part of who you are. It doesn't happen suddenly. It doesn't happen loudly. It happens quietly, inside your mindset, your emotions, your daily thoughts. This final segment is not about grammar, practice, or exercises. It is about becoming the kind of person who speaks English naturally, confidently, and without fear. Because long-term fluency is not a skill, it is a lifestyle, a way of thinking, a way of responding, a way of seeing yourself. Let me take you inside the mind of a lifelong English speaker. A fluent speaker does not think, what if I make a mistake? They think, let me express my idea. A fluent speaker does not think, will they judge my accent? They think, my voice is clear enough to communicate. A fluent speaker does not think, I need perfect grammar. They think, I need to connect. Fluency is emotional maturity in language. And emotional maturity comes from accepting three truths. The first truth, you will never feel 100% ready. Even advanced speakers feel nervous sometimes. Even native speakers stumble. Even confident people lose words. If you wait for a moment when you feel fully ready, you will wait forever. Fluency begins the moment you speak, even when your voice shakes. The second truth, your improvement depends on what you do daily, not what you do perfectly. 5 minutes of speaking every day is more powerful than 2 hours once a week. Consistency rewires your brain. Consistency lowers fear. Consistency builds identity. You do not build fluency by studying harder. You build fluency by showing up every day. The third truth, your relationship with English must become friendly, not stressful. Fluent speakers treat English as a tool, not a test, a partner, not a judge, a language, not a monster. The moment English becomes your friend, fluency becomes your nature. Now let me leave you with a picture. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. You enter a room. Someone speaks to you in English. You understand them. You respond calmly. Your voice carries steadiness, not perfection, but presence. Your mind does not panic. Your thoughts flow. Your confidence leads. This version of you is real. This version of you is waiting. This version of you is built through psychology, not pressure. Your brain is capable. Your voice is capable. Your identity is capable. All you need is the mindset that says, I am not learning English anymore. I am becoming an English speaker. And if this series has helped you, even in a small way, I ask you from my heart, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your journey, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep learning and growing together. Your fluency is not a dream. It is your next chapter, and it begins now.